I want you to ask yourselves, what is the difference between these two photos? This should be easy enough. You probably noticed that the outfit has been completely changed. Harley's stance and expression are also distinctly different. Maybe you even noticed that the pigtails got shorter. There is one key fact that explains all of these differences. This Harley Quinn movie was written by a man, and this one by a woman. This is the perfect example of the male gaze. So today, we will learn what exactly the male gaze is and why it's so harmful. Then we'll take a look at the male gaze in advertising throughout time and whether it has detracted from the waves of feminism. And finally, we'll explore the future of the male gaze. What kind of trajectory are we moving on, and what can we do about it? The male gaze is a term coined by filmmaker Laura Mulvey in her famous 1975 essay, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. Mulvey argued that the most popular movies are filmed in ways that satisfy masculine scopophilia, or sexual pleasure involved in looking. Women are merely added to films and media for their, in Mulvey's words, to be looked at-ness, whether that's for the men creating the media, the men in the media, or the men viewing the media. And this concept of the heterosexual masculine gaze can be extended from film to nearly any other medium. Commercial advertising, magazine covers, song lyrics, books, the list goes on. Now, there are 5 key features of the male gaze that often make it very easy to recognize. Number 1, shots that fixate on just parts of a woman's body, her legs, her breasts, her torso. Number 2, there is very frequently a man involved. Number 3, the woman's outfit is often revealing and impractical. Number 4, she typically serves as the helper, the eye candy, or the romantic interest. And finally, it often doesn't play any key role in the purpose of the media. For example, Harley Quinn wearing stilettos and jean shorts so tiny they're practically a thong has absolutely no relevance to the plot of Suicide Squad, and in fact makes it impractical and unrealistic. And yes, men are sexualized as well. But a 2018 report that analyzed 56 top-grossing films in 20 countries demonstrated the imbalance in male and female representation. 30% of female leads were shown wearing revealing clothing, compared to just 7% of men. 15% of women were shown partially nude, whereas men made up just 8% of the statistic, and women were shown totally naked 4 times as much as men were. Presenting women as objects that exist solely for the pleasure of the heterosexual male is harmful on so many levels. It strips women of their identity, agency, and personality. According to the National Sexual Violence Research Center, 1 in 5 women in the United States have experienced attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. And this dehumanization of women in the media only perpetuates this kind of sexual harassment and abuse. The male gaze also binds men to certain roles and stereotypes. The sexual pursuer, the consumer of women. Beyond that, it often only sexualizes one type of woman. Young, thin, white, perfectly adhering to whatever the beauty standard is at the time. And this can have disastrous effects on young girls' self-esteem and even fuel eating disorders and body dysmorphia. So, we've just looked at what the male gaze is, how to recognize it, and why it's harmful. Now let's take a look at how it has changed throughout time, specifically in terms of advertising, one of the easiest places to find examples of the male gaze. Let's rewind to 100 years in the past, the Roaring 20s. By the end of this decade, women had gained the right to vote, joined the workforce in massive numbers, and experienced newfound independence in their personal lives. But despite this relative freedom achieved by the first wave of feminism, success for women was still equated with daintiness, marriage, modesty, raising children. These values continued well into the 50s and were apparent in popular brand advertising. This tie ad reads, "Show her it's a man's world." And this one for women's deodorant claims, "Society simply won't stand for indelicate women." Fast forward to the second wave of feminism beginning in the early 60s. We began to challenge the idea that a woman's place was in the home, and prominent feminists such as Angela Davis and Audre Lorde helped bring women of color into the picture. But despite these advancements, the male gaze in advertising still looked very similar to the 1920s. Ads like this one for women's deodorant were hardly an improvement from the 20s one we just looked at, sending messages that romanticize male validation and confine women to stereotypes of daintiness and femininity. The 60s also marked a period of extreme diet advertising targeting women, as evidenced by this poster that claims a pear is no shape for a girl. In the 90s and 2000s, we hit a low point in commercializing women's sexuality. Rape and hostility towards women was widely accepted, even glamorized, and misogynistic stereotypes permeated the dialogue of the time. Here are some examples of problematic male gaze-heavy ads from the time that demonstrate this. This suit ad from Suit Supply illustrates an undeniable power dynamic. This beer can is literally morphed with a woman's torso, and this Dolce & Gabbana ad essentially depicts a gang rape. Ads like this normalize inappropriate behavior and use women's bodies in order to sell a product. But beginning around 2012, the fourth wave of feminism aimed to address this extreme objectification and the rise in sexual assault cases that came along with it. And to a large degree, it was successful. Roxane Gay was one of many prominent feminists of the time who actively called out the male gaze, writing in her memoir, "This is what most girls are taught, that we should be seen and not heard. And if we are seen, we should be pleasing to men, acceptable to society." So, did we see lots of the male gaze during this time? Let's take a look. In the 2010s, we actually started to see some really great examples of feminism in advertising. Always' hashtag Like a Girl campaign aimed to reframe the phrase, "you run like a girl," or "you throw like a girl," arguing that it should be a compliment. Goldilocks aired a commercial that encouraged young girls to pursue careers in STEM, a field in which women are significantly underrepresented. So, we've just reviewed how the male gaze has shown up in advertising across the past century, but ultimately it's been present in all kinds of media throughout time. So, where are we headed today? Are we moving beyond the male gaze, or are we seeing even more of it? On the one hand, yes, we are making progress, as we can see with the progression of brands like Thinx Underwear and Aerie, which feature on their websites all kinds of bodies with natural features like body hair and stretch marks. But in saying this, it's important to recognize that we still have a long way to go. As much as the internet has helped empower millions of women, the rise of apps like Instagram and TikTok have helped promote the male gaze through filters that enforce beauty standards and encourage body shaming. On an individual level, the most important thing that you can do is to use your voice to lift up women and to pay attention to what you're buying, supporting, and consuming. I want to see women and girls depicted like this, real humans with personality, grit, and flaws. The next time you see an ad or watch a movie, ask yourself, is this informed by the male gaze? Try using tools like the Bechdel test, which assesses representation of women in film through 3 criteria. A, are there more than 2 women in the film who B, talk to each other about seeing something other than a man? Support media that exhibits the female gaze. A great example is the TV show Fleabag, which depicts sex without over-sexualizing the main female character, and follows the life of a real 3-dimensional woman. Because that's exactly what we are. Not bodies, not silent props, not objects of desire. Real women.